All right, so this is another update on the conference realignment saga. We've got the Pac 12 planning possibly a last ditch meeting on Tuesday, trying to convince Arizona to stay in the conference. The probability of that is virtually nothing. And if Arizona leaves, Arizona State and Utah could possibly follow. That is the whole idea of the four corner school. So we have the Pac 12, which is currently the Pac 9, meeting on Tuesday. And it's just like, how are you going to convince Arizona after the situation with Colorado and Colorado surveying its options and realizing the TV deal, whatever it ends up being, is going to be so bad, we're better off just ditching the Pac-12 and joining the Big 12 because the TV deal is going to be so much better. How do you convince Arizona otherwise? The Pac-12 is in a really bad spot right now, and if they do lose Arizona, it's only going to make things that much worse. The death blow would be Washington and Oregon leaving the conference, but I mean, if they also lose Arizona State and Utah, that would make it a 16-16-16 split between the Big Ten, SEC, and the Big 12, and that would leave the Pac-12 with just 6 teams, and they would be, I would say, a virtual dead conference. At that point, they still would have Oregon and Washington. The other interesting thing I saw, someone was ranking conferences, and this is only based off of this year, so it does include the Pac-12 still having USC and UCLA, but they had the Pac-12 at number 3. You know, obviously the SEC number 1, Big Ten number 2, the Pac-12 with all the quarterbacks returning. Washington's going to be really good. USC with Caleb Williams. Utah's still going to be a really solid team. Oregon has their NIL up and running. They've got Bo Nix returning. Oregon State's got DJ Uiagalelei. It is so sad what has happened to the Pac-12. And if you're the Pac-12, you have to feel powerless, because when you look at a program like Oregon and even Washington, you can make the argument both of those programs are more powerful in the college football landscape than any program right now in the Big 12, but it's just been such bad leadership. This really dates back to the whole debacle with the Pac-12 network and how that situation played out. Nobody being able to watch those games. They're all on at 10:30 at night. They did a bad job there, and now it's like, we finally see USC, the forgotten superpower of the West Coast, finally waking up with Lincoln Riley, Caleb Williams, the quarterback factory, the whole 9 yards. A Heisman Trophy winner. And as that's happening, they're already out the door to the Big Ten. It is demoralizing if you're the Pac-12. You are a conference that really, you know, if you still had USC, you've got Oregon, you are better than the Big 12. But at this point, you've pigeonholed yourself. You lose the 2 big dogs, or 2 of the bigger dogs with USC and UCLA. Certainly the top big dog, USC. And now you're on the verge of losing even more teams to a conference. Theoretically, you should be more powerful then. It is total incompetence, and I do feel bad for a lot of the Pac-12 fans out there, and the Big 12 is taking advantage of this situation. You go back a few years ago, a few summers ago, the Big 12 loses Texas and Oklahoma, the 2 big powerhouses, and their ability to rebound. The Pac-12 not realizing in the moment, no, you should look to try and take some of the bigger schools to make sure you survive later on. I think the Pac-12 thought they were going to get a lot better of a TV deal, because when you look at the situation, number one, they thought they were going to be negotiating this TV deal with USC on board. And you also, if you're the Pac-12, you can say, we are the 4th window. We're the 10:30 at night window. I'm sure they thought ESPN would have been interested. Fox has done deals with them in the past, possibly. But unfortunately, just the way the situation has played out, their conference is on the verge of a total collapse. The Big Ten seems like they are going to let the Big 12 deliver the kill shot to the Pac-12. Big winner could be the Mountain West. So yes, this is the idea of the Big 12 taking the 4 corner schools. You've got Oregon and Washington going to the Big Ten. A lot of this is speculation, but this is how it would play out. And then the Mountain West possibly could get the scraps I think if worse came to worse, Stanford would just go to be an independent, honestly. I don't think they would join the Mountain West. That's not a fit. California is a little bit weirder. They might actually go to the Mountain West, but I certainly could see Washington State and Oregon State being completely left out in the cold and having to join the Mountain West in a scenario like this if it does play out as they're saying. Breaking, here's the update on FSU. We are now hearing it will be a negotiated buyout of the contract down to $300 million, but paid in installments of close to $30 million a year annually. The Noles get roughly double that from the Big Ten or SEC each year, though. So that is a massive buyout. Florida State, possibly Clemson, some of the other schools in the ACC dealing with that terrible TV deal. They're latched onto it through 2036. A $300 million buyout. Then you're looking at $30 million per year. If you do the math on that, if you get around $60, $70 million from the Big Ten, from the SEC, it could potentially make sense. That's just how bad the ACC's current contract is. And I don't know if this is true. This is all unconfirmed stuff, but those are the first numbers I'm really seeing. I think Florida State, Clemson, they're trying to find a legal way out of this TV deal and trying to join another conference without having to pay that massive buyout. But it's not surprising that buyout is over, $250 million based on the fact that it's for another 13 years. That is going to be very, very hard to get out of. When the Big Ten and the SEC say they want to integrate their new teams before deciding about the future expansion, I believe them. It makes sense. When people float rumors about negotiated settlements with the ACC, I don't believe them. It doesn't make sense. Be patient. Not right now. So this person, very level-headed, coming out and saying, look, the Big Ten and the SEC, they're adding teams next year. They want to get those teams acclimated to the conference for at least a year or two, and then they'll talk about additions possibly with the Big Ten looking back to the Pac-12, and then the SEC looking at ACC teams, depending. This is all moving very quickly. The thing that could throw a big monkey wrench into this, if the Big 12 does decide to go to 16 teams and does get the four corner schools, then that would completely destroy that conference. And you've got Oregon and Washington at that point saying, we've got to go now somewhere or else we're not going to have a home. It's like the whole idea of Oregon and Washington possibly going to the Big 12 because there's nowhere left to go. But I still think the Big 10 is going to be opening their doors to Oregon and Washington. Last year it was reported. Now, this is when Kevin Warren was the commissioner of the Big 10, but it was reported that Oregon and Washington had already been vetted and they were given the okay to join the Big Ten. We've heard different stuff this year, possibly the Big Ten saying, we're done for now. We just want both USC and UCLA to come in and get acclimated. But who knows? These things change so quickly. And then I did just want to give more context to this situation. How valuable are teams? How popular are they? This is total viewers based on 2022 games, and this is throughout the entire season. So these numbers are not perfect. It is not an average, but you can see you've got your Ohio State, Alabama, Michigan, Tennessee, Georgia, Notre Dame at number 6. That's part of the reason why the Big Ten is so interested in adding them at some point. LSU at number 7, Texas, who is going to the SEC, at number 8. Penn State, and there's Clemson at number 10. Clemson, there's been rumors, can they get out of that ACC deal? Based on how bad that ACC deal is, by the year 2027, 2028, Clemson would be making less per year off of their TV deal than Rutgers. So that's just how bad it is, and that is why Clemson and FSU are saying something has to change. This is not right. Whether we need to pay a buyout, whether we can legally get out of this and claim something, I don't know. But it's the whole idea, the perspective of Northwestern making more off of their TV deal than Clemson when Clemson is top 10 in terms of, total viewership. It doesn't make any sense. Florida at number 11, Oregon at number 12. And this is why Oregon is so attractive. And it really blows my mind when people say the Big Ten doesn't want Oregon. Oregon's got all the Nike money. They've got crazy facilities. They're loaded. and they're throwing around NIL money like crazy, and they're top 12 in terms of total viewers, and that's with Oregon playing a few very late night games, 10:30 games. That's very impressive by Oregon. You've got TCU at 13. That number is juiced because they appeared in both a college football playoff game and the national championship. You have USC at number 14, FSU at 15. That's another team that's, they're very pissed off right now at that ACC deal. They're top 15 in terms of viewership. Nebraska at 16, MSU at number 17, A&M, Maryland at number 19. That number is juiced because they face Ohio State, Michigan, and Penn State. Auburn at 20, Arkansas, Ole Miss, Oklahoma at 23, Oklahoma State, USC, who also will be joining the Big Ten, Wisconsin, Iowa, Kentucky, Baylor sitting at 29, Kansas State at 30, Indiana at 31. That's number is juiced as well because they're in the Big Ten East. And then you have Illinois, Utah, who possibly could be going to the Big 12. And then Washington, they would be the other team going to the Big 10, a little bit lower at 34. But they also have decent enough academics that I think the Big 10 would take them in that event. And then I was looking at some of the TV ratings just overall. Some crazy stuff. The number one game last year in terms of the bowl season was not the national championship. It was the Ohio State-Georgia 8:30 night game, right around 22.5 million viewers. TCU Michigan, which was the earlier game, was just below that at 21.7 million. And then the national championship, the game on a Monday night, they started it at 7:30. The absolute beatdown was all the way down at 17 million. So I guess it's not that surprising considering TCU probably not going to be the biggest draw, but I also do think college football is really hurting themselves by continuing to have the national championship on a Monday night. That's never how it was supposed to work with college football. College football is a great vibe. All their games are on Saturday. Every big game outside of a few, like the week 1 game where they play it, the big Sunday night game, outside of that, every big college football game is played on a Saturday, and then you take the national championship, you put it on a Monday night, when people are going back to work in January. It doesn't make any sense to me, and the ratings unfortunately suffer from it. They need to work out something with ESPN and the NFL because the NFL normally has their wild card games that week. You've got to say, listen, and it can be done if you tell the NFL, if you have, 3 games on Saturday, 3 games on Sunday, all you would have to do is push one game to Friday night. You have a Friday night NFL wildcard game. I understand it sounds crazy, but it could work. It would still get a bunch of views. It would be a standalone NFL game on a Friday night early January. You have another, you have 2 Saturday NFL games. One would be at 1 o'clock. The other would be at 4:15. The national championship would fit in right on that Saturday night in January at 8:30 or 8, whatever time you want, after the second NFL game. And then you have 3 more NFL games on Sunday. 1, 4, and 7, which is normally what they do, or something like that. They might only have 2 on Sunday. I'm not sure, but it would have to be a model like that. But this whole thing where the national championship is disregarded on a Monday night at 7:30, and then I live streamed the national championship. It was a complete clown show. And I feel bad for TCU, but it's like that's so bad for college football. This is supposed to be the biggest game of the year. What was it, 65-7? It is just not a good look. So guys, we do have big stuff. The Pac-12 meeting on Tuesday. It's their last hope to try and keep Arizona in the conference. A lot of people are expecting this week or next week Arizona is the next big domino, and possibly Arizona State and Utah to follow right after that, which would cripple the Pac-12 there. So guys, that is going to do it for this video. Make sure you follow me on Twitter. Link to that's always in the description.